Good evening. Good evening. Hello, friends. Hello. How's it going? Jersey Red. Rusty, what's going on? Happy Friday, everybody. Thanks for joining in. What's up, MA from Washington State? Welcome, welcome. Steve, what's going on? Tom from Ohio. Welcome, welcome. Jeff, what's going on? Peter, there you go. Getting into some alt tuning songs on Guitar Tricks, of which there are a number of them for sure. So good job on that, Peter. The Stone Sway in Open G, which we're going to talk about in this part 2 episode, right? Scott, what's going on? Excellent news. That's awesome. Stuck on Kashmir right now. That's great. Excellent, excellent. Okay, cool. Well, welcome, everybody. This is part 2 of what we started last week and kind of didn't get through everything. By request, the alternate tunings sort of workshop, I guess. I hope everybody's keeping cool out there. And in the case of if it's winter, like down under, hope you're keeping warm. But man, it's burning up here where I'm at in Middle Tennessee. And I'm sure a lot of you in the USA are just feeling the heat right now, right? Jim Gregory, what's up? Psyched for part 2. Excellent. Jody 1, what's going on? Welcome. Theodore, welcome. All right. Excellent, everybody. For those of you joining for the first time, we're here every Friday at the same time. We've got tabs for what we go over in a PDF file. Just expand the description below this video. You'll see a link to a PDF file for the tabs. And that's kind of what we go through every week. We'll switch it up between electric and acoustic usually every week, but this is a special case. We're doing sort of this alternate tuning workshop that leaked into this week. We're doing a second week. So once again on the acoustic. But like I said, disclaimer before, all of this stuff is transferable to the electric. Okay, so if you got electric, no problem at all. Just happen to be doing this on the acoustic. All right. Yeah, wet and cold in Sydney. There you go. Oh, man. Rad Flying V, what's up? Good to see you. Freezing cold and rain there. Okay, well, man, crazy. And MA in Washington's got it perfect, 71. There you go. Chris Cook's here. What's up? He's got the tuner. Danny from Arkansas. Good to see you. All right, everybody's jumping on here now. Okay, great. Welcome, welcome. If you need the tabs, expand the description. You know how the drill. There should be a link to it. And if you remember how we left off last week, what did we do last week? We did drop D, we did open D, and we did dadgad. And I think that's probably it because we did a lot of talking too, right? So, but we didn't get to probably arguably the most popular open tuning, which is open G. Okay, so that's what we're going to start with this week. The open G tuning, popularized by a number of rock guys, plenty of blues people. Okay. Cheers, everybody. All right. So I'm starting off in standard tuning. Remember, I suggested the old clip-on tuner is really handy, especially for getting into these alternate tunings. But of course, any tuner will help. I like to rough it in, just trying to use my ear at first. Hey, Donna, welcome. And so with the open G, if you look at the handout, we're going to be keeping standard tuning except for 3 strings. We're going to drop the low string from E to D. That's a full step. We're going to drop the A string to G. That's a whole step. And we're going to drop the high string from E to D, which is a whole step. Okay, so these outer strings right here. So the first one I'm going to do actually is, because I can hear it really well, is the low E to D. And you kind of like hear where it sort of beats. You can hear those beats where it kind of wavers in and out, and that's sort of telling you that it's not quite where it should be. And where you get it to where that beating levels out, that's going to be in the ballpark where you want to go. Sometimes you can hear it better with the harmonics. don't know if you can tell that, if you can hear that. You know, if I'm just under it right here, you still hear it. Whoa, 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 whoa. There, that's pretty close. Okay. Then I'm going to bring the A string down a full step to G. And I've got a G string right here already, so I can. It's the same sort of idea. You want to bring it down, and you've got a higher octave G. You're going to the lower octave, and you'll sort of hear where it comes in, where it stops going against each other. Okay, pretty close, and then up top. And you can check it against any of these other D strings. Close. Okay, so now I'm just going to use the tuner just to fine tune it, and usually the neck, you know, your neck might move a little bit, and so kind of everything goes a little bit out. So just double check everything on a tuner. There we go. Okay, so now I'm in open G. Now, introduced this idea last week where you want to focus in on where the strings are the same. And in the case of open G, it's actually really useful to know that the fourth, third, and second strings are in standard. Okay, so you've kind of moved the low, the fifth, and the high string, but you've got the D, G, and B string. So all your familiar shapes on those three strings are still intact. And so that can be a really great anchor point to be able to kind of transfer your stuff over. Okay. Donna's saying you would rather use the capo than do this. It's sort of not really the point of what we're doing. The capo will just transpose your standard tuning into different keys so that you can use your same open chord shapes, which is totally great. What we're doing with the alternate tunings is just sort of coming up with some different sounds. With the capo, if you move the capo up and down, you're coming up with a different sound in that the open chords are in a higher register, right? Because you're putting those open chords into higher keys. But with the alternate tunings, and as you'll see as we go through the tabs tonight and kind of change up some alternate tunings, you can get pretty out there with some stuff. And generally speaking, it does a couple things, like what we talked about last week. It tunes the whole guitar to a chord. In this case, it's an open G chord. So of course you can play full chords with just one finger. Okay? Which is why it's great for slide, right? You put it on the slide and right? Because the slide's going to hit all six strings, and you know. Okay. Steve's saying, I've ever listened to Leo Kottke play 12-string slide. I need to check that out. That sounds really interesting. Wow, good one. I have not heard that, but I'm jonesing to hear it now. Sounds good. So there's that, but there's also the droning element of using open strings as a drone. Okay, so I've got now a low D, a G, and a high D that I can add to a bunch of chord shapes here, right? Okay. So it's about the sound that you're utilizing some of the open strings to kind of create a drone to play some chord shapes off of. So Donna, what's up, Russ? Thank you. Donna is concerned about the neck and whether we need adjustment a lot and would have to affect the neck and shorten the lifespan of the guitar. If you leave it in these tunings, the guitar might adjust a little bit, but we're just kind of going through this stuff a little bit quickly, and we're not making gigantic moves, okay, which is the big thing, okay? So, but, you know, you kind of bring up a good point. If you're if anybody's uncomfortable doing this, maybe, you know, kind of lay back and, you know, enjoy you know, me kind of twisting it and playing some stuff. But, you know, where it gets really hairy is if you're really tuning up the strings like a fourth, a fifth, that kind of thing. You know, we're only talking about moving it down a whole step, which really isn't going to create major problems with the guitar, okay? Yeah, Major Jimmy Page right there. We'll wait till we get to exercise 1B and you'll see it. Okay, but where I really wanted to start was exercise 1 with more of this sort of a riff that you might recognize. And if you notice, with exercise 1, there's sort of 2 chords that I'm going to be playing off of, and I've got I'm not actually using the low D string, and this is kind of a little bit common. Donna, not a problem at all. All good. These are all valid questions, so I'm happy to answer all the questions. Don't apologize, please. Happy to answer all of those. Okay. What you'll find in open G is sometimes if you're playing stuff like kind of that, I think I talked about it a little bit last week. In the context of a band, if you've got a bass player, you've got a keyboard player, maybe you've got another guitar player, it can get a little bit muddy on that low string. Okay? So what a lot of people do is just play from the A string or the 5th string all the way up. And so this first example, I'll just play through it and we'll talk about it a little bit. It goes like this. So I muted the low string with my thumb. Okay, and some of you might recognize that riff. Playing off that open G chord. Okay, and just adding one little double stop to it here. 2nd fret of the G, 1st fret of the B string. Yes, Jody 1, you got it. So, and we talked about a little bit about this chord last time in open D, but it was on different strings. Okay, this one we're playing on G and B strings, and it makes it into a sus2/4. Okay, so it's a G chord, but it takes away the 3rd, right? Our 3rd's the B, and if we add the A and the C onto it, you're adding 2 of the susses, the suspended notes, the 2nd and the 4th. So it's kind of this floaty, really cool transitionary chord. Okay, and then a classic sort of hammer-on lick here on the open D string to the 2nd fret, and then getting the open G string, okay? Have we played in open C? No, we have not. It's coming up. It's coming up. We've got it. And you can get the tabs below this video. Just expand the description, all right? So now if we want to change chords, let's go to the 4 chord, which would be a C. I'm barring down on the 5th fret from the A string all the way up. That gives me a C major chord, right? And there's that kind of Stonesy sound, right? Where you still got the D, G, and B strings in standard, right? So you're able to play off that with the by changing the triad on the D, G, and B string. So I'm adding the 7th fret of the D, 6th fret of the B string. You're adding that F onto the C chord. So those are 2 really popular moves with open G. It's either adding those sus or adding the that full triad where it's the 2 frets up on the D string, 1 fret up on the B string. So just move it around, you can find all sorts of things that sound pretty cool. And you've got these moves. Now, obviously, this is a Keith Richards kind of thing, right? And he famously took the low string completely off his guitar, right? He goes, I don't even need it, right? Well, he's got a bass player, and, you know, the Stones now have keyboards and all that kind of stuff, right? He doesn't need the low string in there, right? Low string sounds really good if you're the only guitarist. Like, say, on an acoustic guitar, okay? Adds a little bit of thickness underneath. But generally speaking, it kind of muddies it up a little bit. It tightens up a little bit if you mute that low string, okay? Cool, so we got some good questions here. Martin, how do you know the name of the chords on the neck? Okay, so let's dig into this a little bit. This is where your fingerboard knowledge comes into play and can really help you out, okay? It's a C chord at the 5th fret as you count up from the nut in open G tuning. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to think about it, okay? That's one of them, is that you can sort of count up from, you know that this string now is G, okay? We tuned it to G. So if you go up the musical alphabet, G, A is now on the 2nd fret, B is now on the 4th fret, and that makes C on the 5th fret. Okay, so you can do it that way. Another quicker way to do it is to think about your familiar shapes and think about standard tuning and go, okay, what we did here is we took the A string and we moved it down a step. Okay, so we tuned it down. So in order to compensate, I have to move up 2 frets with any note I want to fret on the A string. So for example, normally in standard tuning, I would want to go to the 3rd fret of the A string to get a C note, right? But because I tuned down a full step, I have to compensate. I have to move up 2 frets or a whole step in order to make the C. So now that C becomes the 5th fret, okay? And if you kind of keep that in mind, that's sort of a way to think about it a little bit, right? Same thing as we were talking about the low string. What if you have a chord, and for example, we've got D, G, D on the bottom here, right? So if I want to have, instead of the open G string, I want to add a G on the low string, it would normally be on the 3rd fret, but I'm tuned down to D, so I have to move up 2 frets, and now that G is on the 5th fret. So these are the ways that we kind of think about it. So if you have some fretboard knowledge, this is a good way to kind of like think about what strings have changed and where can I find those notes now, okay? Martin says, my teacher told me that the bass note is the name of the chord most of the time. Yeah, so yeah, it's about knowing sort of upper chord shapes too, right? Okay, but you know, once you get comfortable in an open tuning, for example, open G, you know that from the 5th string on, I can just put down 1 finger and it's a major chord, right? And I know that the root, which would be on the 5th string, is now going to be 2 frets up from where I know it in standard tuning. So this is going to be C, and this is going to be D. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Clear as mud, right? All right, take care, Donna. Thanks for dropping in. Doug, what's going on from Denver? You made it on, even with heavy traffic. I love it. Thank you. Excellent. Okay. Cool. So let's move on now to 1B, the open G progression. Okay. A little more going from the Stones-ish thing to going up to just using some cool familiar shapes on the D, G, and B strings, more of a Zeppelin-y thing. Goes like this. Let's try it again. So let's talk about this a little bit, right? It comes from sort of a Zeppelin-y thing, right? there's another part in the song that's okay, lots of cool stuff. But really, sort of the key to this sort of song is once again that drony kind of thing that's holding down the sound of everything, but you're moving chords, right? You're moving triad shapes against these ringing out drone notes, right? D, G, D, right? Yeah, and Supertramp's got the same thing too. Yeah. It is a Supertramp thing for sure. I can't remember exactly how that one goes. Give a little bit, right? Yes. So just think about it this way. You've got D, G, and B and all your familiar triad shapes, right? Glenn, yes, it is. Wild Horses is too. And by the way, side note, just since we're talking about Wild Horses, on the Guitar Tricks version, I taught that in standard. I did not teach it in Open G. I got a lot of flack for that, actually. But at the time, I just felt like, it's cool in Open G, but it didn't really utilize sort of some of the benefits of having an Open G. Like it was just sort of transferred over. You could basically play that song on standard tuning and not really lose out on anything. Okay. So I chose to teach it in standard, which I probably shouldn't have, but anyway, that's what I thought about. Doug, grab the Martin. Excellent. But if you think about it, just a G triad with the open strings, C triad, right? And then a D against a G, so sort of a sus thing. And then the C against the G, another sus thing. Okay. And then when we get to that second bar, it's a different fingering. Now, if you look at it, we're grabbing the 7th fret of the G and the 7th fret of the B string, which is part of a D major chord, right? But what's cool is that now we have the open string up top is a D. So that can ring out nice and rich. You've also got the D string as a D, right? So that sounds really cool. And then if you add the 7th fret of the A, that's another D, right? It's usually at the 5th fret, but because we're tuned to G, we have to move it up 1 fret. Okay? And then if you add the low D, it's nice and thick. You got that low D on the open. Okay, so you got really nice. So you're not fretting, like you're sort of fretting the minimum amount of notes to make a major chord, but utilizing those open strings for a richness, for that drony kind of sound, right? Glenn, we might have to revisit it. It's not in the cards right now, but yeah, maybe we'll have to do that. We'll have to go back and redo Wild Horses in Open G. Look at that. Martin got up on Cripple Creek in Open G. That's cool. Excellent. Okay, so hopefully you can see. And just think about, where are those lower notes? Okay, 5th string, 6th string. They're going to be 2 frets up from where you usually know them, right? A C is not going to be at the 3rd fret. It's going to be at the 5th fret. But once you get the chord shape, right, which is just your one finger, now you know you got a C major right there, right? Because usually you would be down 2 frets on the 5th string. You would also be down 2 frets on the high string. But because they're tuned lower, now you can do it with one finger. Makes sense. You with me? There's some Open G stuff. Now, this is all meant as sort of an introduction. It's not a thorough exploration of all these tunings. Of course, there's going to be tons of chord shapes, tons of different things you could do with it. I'm going to rewind a little bit because Martin's asking, let's say I have to play an A7. How do I do that? Well, okay. We want to find where there is a G note. We want to, okay, so to get to an A chord, we just do one finger at the second fret. That's going to be A major, right? Now, how do we get to a G? Well, one of the ways is we still have an open G here. So if you grab, now you have to use 4 fingers for an A7. That's one way to do it, okay? Normally it would just be these 2 fingers, but because the 5th string is tuned down, you've got a fret at the 2nd fret, and then also the high string is tuned down, so you have to fret at the 2nd fret. So there's one. Here's another way. Bar it, and grab your pinky on the 5th fret of the high string. Okay? This is where knowing about chord formulas and the notes that form the chords are really important, because I just figured it out. I never even thought before how to play a 7th chord in open G, but I can figure it out really easy because I know that if you take an A major and add a G note to it, it's going to turn it into an A7, right? So my G is normally at the 3rd fret of the high string, but because it's tuned down to D, I got to move up to the 5th, right? So here you go. So there's your second, okay? And Martin says, another question, why do some chords get a 7? It's a musical choice, right? It's all down to the composer, to the songwriter, right? You know, a lot of times we want extended chords or more rich chords to support maybe a more detailed vocal melody. Maybe sometimes we just want it to sound richer, right? And sometimes a power chord, a root and a 5th, is just what the doctor orders for something really basic and powerful, or a major and minor chord is just what the doctor orders, or we want to throw 7s in there just to make it a little more rich, a little more interesting, a little more textured, right? So these are songwriting musical choices, or composer musical choices, or guitar player musical choices, right? Terry's talking about hot-blooded, right? There you go. Yes, indeed. It works really well in that tuning, right? Cool. All righty. Exercise 1 down. We're going to get through it tonight. I added some extra stuff. We might not get to it. We'll see. I'll try to get to it as best I can. But the next one on the menu, as was asked about, is the open C tuning. So now we're on exercise 2. For those of you joining late, expand the description, get the PDF of the tabs, and we'll have a look at that. That's what we're going through. Now, once again, open C, we're taking a whole chord. And yeah, well, Martin's asking why an A7, or that's why an A7 sounds good in blues, I guess. Well, really, the dominant 7th is the sound of blues. Like, you play a 7th chord and it just sounds bluesy, right? That's just the character of it. So that's why you often see dominant chords, you know, 7th chords, dominant 9th chords, all over blues, is that's just the sound. That's the feeling of it, right? So there you go. But it also, in the context of classical music, the dominant 7th is really important as a 5 chord, right? To really sort of make a tense, it's all about tension and release. And that 5 chord, if it's a dominant 7th chord, going back to a 1 chord, really accentuates that tension, okay? So it's also a big part of classical, and obviously pop and all other genres. There you go. Doug, I'm not sure if Can't Find My Way Home is in open C. Maybe it is. I'm not 100% sure on that. Don't know. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at what we have to move down here. And just as a side note, I'll try to answer this quickly, Doug. Seems like Mixolydian mode is great with the blues. Thoughts to as why? I'll tell you exactly why it works great with blues is because we use those dominant 7th chords, okay? And what's the formula for a dominant 7th chord? A root, major 3rd, 5th, minor 7th, or flat 7th, okay? What's the Mixolydian mode? What you have in a Mixolydian mode is a root, a flat, a major third, a fifth, and you have a flat 7. That's why that's the natural choice. That's the natural scale for playing blues. Okay? It's because you have that flat 7 giving you part of the sound of a 7th chord, but you also have the major third, which gives you the other part of the major chord, right? Let's see, dominant 9th chord, for example. Oh man, now you're stretching me, right? Dominant 9th, so I have to have the G in there. And I also, from A, have to have a B in there, right? So where is the B going to be? Let's do it in G. Let's see here. That's dominant 9th. Not as an effective shape in open tuning as it would be in standard, but tune in next week and we'll have a dominant 9th because we're doing rhythm stuff next week on the electric, okay? All right, Laura's joining. What's up? Thanks for coming in. Terry, problem with open C is the low string buzzy on low action electric guitar. Yeah, so we're getting down a little bit, okay? Apologize for that. It does tend to get a little bit buzzy, okay? So we're going to take the low string from D and go to C. You've still got the G, but then you're also going to take the 4th string and go down a full step to C. So we've got G, C, G, C, G. Okay. We're going to take the open B string and go up to C. Now it's starting to sound cool, right? I've got a D up top. I've got to go to E. Careful. All right, let's double check the tuning here. Have to come down a little bit. Apologies for tuning it in. I want to get it close as we're doing it. So now we've got an open C chord, okay? C, G, C, G is going to be root fifths, okay? And then you've got another higher C. So C, G, C, G, C. You've got all root fifth, basically a power chord until the higher string, which gives you the major third, okay? So let's look at the first example, exercise 2A. I've got like a little melody that you play on the top. And again, this is really takes the idea of the droning open strings and putting a melody on top of it. So it sounds like this. Okay, so what do we got? The G from the 5th going to the flat 7 to the C note. Okay, so you got that sort of bluesy mood. Right? Right on, Peter. Thanks for joining late. I appreciate everybody jumping on. So even that by itself is kind of cool, right? There you go, almonds, right? that's if you want to go sort of bluesy with it, right? But we've got sort of this upper melody, which could be, just thought it'd be really cool to just illustrate that, you get on these open tunings and take advantage of the drone, and even all that you can take one of those strings and just make a melody out of it and add it to the drone and just, okay. So once you start finding where these things are, right, because you've got that bluesy thing on the low string, but you've also got it on the flat 7 on the 5th string. And because these are all C's and G's, you've got them on all the different octaves, right? So like, okay. Doug, what's up, Trushas from New Mexico? Welcome. Expand the description and get the tabs below this video. Doug, how often is OpenC used? I would, yeah, tough question. Because, I'm only aware of like a few songs here and there. As far as my awareness of it, a few songs here and there use this tuning. I know Soundgarden used, sort of a variation of this OpenC tuning on a lot of songs. So, it's out there, but how often is it being used? Can't really answer that question, but probably not super often, right? But it's cool. Like, you can take sort of the ideas of what we're doing here and just, kind of twist the knobs and find different chords that you like and mess around with it, right? Like, Joni Mitchell's tunings are kind of crazy that way, a little bit unconventional, right? Joe Walsh using it too, I guess. Yeah. See, I'm not familiar with that song, but there you go. Anyway, but it's fun to mess around with this stuff, right? Let's go to exercise 2B, and I'll show you sort of another riff I came up with. And I realized that you've got the G string and the high string, which are tuned to G and E. Those are actually from standard tuning, right? You've got a G and you've got an E. So when you think about, okay, the rest of it is sort of a C drone, but I've got I've got sixth interval shapes that I know from standard tuning, right? That work key of C. So made this little exercise here, or this little riff here, exercise 2B. Whoops. Right, that's the first bar. And so I've got sixth. I've got the 9th fret of the G, 8th fret of the high string. That's a C major double stop, right? And then I just move up from there in sixths. And I end up in another double stop shape that's part of C major, right? This is 10 and 10, and then 12 and 12 on the G and high E. And if you got all the other strings ringing out, it's a pretty cool drone, right? Second part of this goes. So kind of like with that open G, what I discovered is that you've got a shape that looks like the one that's on a different string set for open G, but you can apply it to the G and high E string and get that 4-chord sound against the major chord. Okay. So there you go. Putting this exercise together. right? Pretty cool sound, I think. Cool. Martin says you need a lot of tension for slide. I guess it depends on your string gauge. Yeah, it depends. I mean, look, if you're going to keep a guitar in an open tuning, and you kind of want to figure out what string gauges work the best for the best tension, right? Because that's going to change just depending on what the pitches are of each of these strings. Okay, so a little bit of experimentation will probably, kind of reveal what you should do with that. Okay, but you want to keep, a pretty even tension on the guitar so that it's not hard on the guitar. It's sort of the thing that Donna was alluding to earlier with, kind of twisting the knobs and coming up with all these different things. If you want to keep a guitar in an open tuning, then find the optimum string gauges so that you've got a sort of consistent tension on that guitar, if that makes sense. Further to that, just talking a little bit about slide guitar, typically you'd want your, if you have a guitar set up for an open tuning and slide, you might want to think about raising the action a little bit, just because to make that slide a little bit cleaner, because if your action's a little bit low, your slide can kind of dig into the frets a little bit. It doesn't quite sound as clean, right? So something else to think about there. Doug is asking, what's the tuning on each string for open C? Steve Earle might use it. Yeah, he might. Yeah, so low to high. We've got, this is in the handout, in the PDF handout, exercise. Example 2. From low to high, it's going to be C, G, C, G, C, and then E up top, okay? And Terry, yes, open E for a lot of the slide playing is a really popular choice. I didn't cover open E last week, but you can think of open E as the same as open D, which we did do last week. And if you missed it last week, check it out on the channel because all of these are still archived up there. But open E and open D are the same tuning. They're just a step apart. So it's whether you want to kind of tune up some strings from standard or tune down some strings from standard, right? Tuning up, you'll have to tune up to get open E, but you'll have to tune down to get open D, right? So I just picked one of those, but it's really the same shapes and the same moves. It just depends on what keys you want to play in, or what key you want the open to be in, right? If that makes sense, right? Cool. Which is most popular for slide? Probably toss up between open G and open D or open E, I would think. Okay. Yes, indeed. All right, exercise 3. Let's go to this variation of open C, the open C6. And what we do here is instead of having the G on the 5th string, we tune it to A. Okay. And that's your 6, basically, is adding an A into it. But this particular, there's a number of ways to do open C6. For the purpose of what I'm going to teach, it's more of a Zeppelin approach. Jimmy Page did this on a number of songs. So let me just tune it real quick, and I've got a question here, but kind of way out now. So basically, in order to get it to sound like an open C chord, you've got an A string. So you're back into standard tuning on that string. So you can go to the C note, 3rd fret. Now you've got it. Okay. Now let me I don't want to get too far ahead here because Manjeef has a question: how to avoid the other string sound when sliding particular string? Yes. So it's all about muting, okay? And Martin is correct that, a little bit of palm muting, and you also want to think about muting, any kind of muting that you can do. It's a little bit beyond the scope of what we're covering tonight, but basically, you can use either hand to mute the strings that you don't want to ring out, okay? And you have to kind of develop these techniques as you go. And so palm muting a little bit, or resting your hand, your strumming hand or your finger picking hand on the low strings, okay? And you can dampen the strings that you don't want it to ring out. There are little tricks that you can use while fretting certain notes that you do want to ring out, but then, sort of pressing a little bit of flesh against an adjacent string so that it doesn't ring out. If you're on Guitar Tricks, check out, go to the search function and just type in muting. There's a number of tutorials on this. Christopher Schlegel recently did a sort of a tutorial on just muting, looking at muting, and it's really important. I would encourage you to do that if you're on guitartricks.com, all right? All right, so first thing to notice about this is now you've got open A string on the 5th string, and you've got a G on the open 3rd string. So this will give you your familiar octave shapes. So if I go the 3rd fret of the A and 5th fret of the G, comments just went wacko. Crazy. Am I still transmitting here? We're still getting through? And hold on a second. Oh man, I just lost my comments. That is so strange. I think my computer might have freaked out. Hold on a second. I can barely... I'm still live. Okay, we're still going. My computer's kind of freaking out a little bit, I think. So I might not be able to get your comments here. So I apologize. I can see that you're doing it, okay? That you're sending messages, okay? But I probably won't be able to read the questions. It's all pixelated and really weird. So I apologize for that. But we got 15 minutes left. I'll just run through the rest of these exercises, okay? All right, so I apologize. Won't be able to see your questions, okay? So what you've got is a familiar octave shape. And when you combine it with the other strings, okay, so for example, I'm in an open C6, but if I get the C note on the A string, C note on the G string, 5th fret, curl my fingers so I can get the note in between, there's a nice C chord right there. But now I can move this octave shape and make melodies, right? So this first exercise is basically and so he's using not C major, but he's using sort of more of an exotic scale. There's a flat 2 in there, and kind of some, sort of an Eastern India kind of scale, right? I simplified the strums on this, so if I'm just going. So that's exercise 3A, and kind of taken from one of those Zeppelin tunes. And there's nothing really to that. It's a melody played with octaves against a drone, against that C drone. All those other strings just drone it. Okay. Here's another riff that he does. That kind of idea. So you're going to see that in the third example, okay, 3B, where we've got the C, okay, because this is a C6. You hear that A note kind of provides a little bit of a tension in there, right? So it resolves nicely when I hit the 3rd fret of the A string. And then up on the higher ones, I'm just pressing down 3rd fret, 2nd fret on the top 2 strings. Just kind of showing you some options a little bit, right? That's the idea with the open C6. Okay. I super apologize. It's a jumbled mess on my comments for some reason. It's really weird. So I apologize. I'm not going to be able to see your comments or answer your questions, but I'll keep plowing through it. Okay. So we've got a couple more tunings to go, and these are sort of anomalies a little bit. And, take care a little bit when retuning these ones, because as you can see, we're really going for the drone thing and stacked octaves on notes. Okay. Exercise 4, E B E tuning. Okay. So we got to come back up to E. Now I'm going to tune the 5th string down to E as well. So that's going to be really low. It's kind of flappy a little bit. Now I got to go with the D string up to E. So this is where it gets a little bit like you want to just make sure. Okay. Now this G is going to go down to E. So it's really just doing this for sort of a chorus effect and a little bit of thickness, right? You've got the same note on the bottom 2 strings, and then you got the next octave on the next 2 strings. So sort of like having a 12 string a little bit. Now I want to tune the 2nd string to B. That gives me a 5th. And then the high string's E. So what do we got here? Pretty cool. I think this is Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young tuning, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? So, you kind of come up with some cool chords, and you've got that E ringing on the bottom. Right? You've got the 10th fret of the 3rd and 2nd string and 12th fret of the high string. And I'm going to move that down 1 fret to the 9th fret. Kind of a cool sound, right? Now remember, you've got a B and E on top. So that's familiar. That's from standard tuning. So you can move those shapes, right? This is going from a D major to an E major, kind of outlining the top part of those chords, right? Against an E on the bottom. And then moving in thirds up to higher notes in the E major. Martin, I can see it. Your heart stops a little when you tune up. Yes, you don't want it to snap. That's it. I can kind of read that one. All right, I'll try and keep with it. All right, so pretty cool sound, right? And by the way, I'll just say that there's endless variations of this kind of thing where, a lot of redundant notes, and then just finding shapes that add just simple melodies to the drone. You can come up with these riffs, right? So, pretty cool, right? I think it's cool. Final tuning, and sort of the same idea, but way different here. I'm going to go way down on the low string all the way to B. So if yours was crapping out on C, this is probably not worth trying on the electric. But anyway, I can get it just going there. Down to D. Everywhere else, everything else is going to D. it's got to be the down. B. B on the low string, D everywhere else. That's what we're trying to get to here. This is the Goo Goo Dolls tuning. And the Goo Goo Dolls are famous for doing types of tunings like these, but I noticed that they're always different. So he's just like tuning his strings kind of however, just to got to go up to D here. This is the one that gets snapped. There we go. There we go. Close enough, right? It's not quite there, but you can kind of hear the idea. So the riff here goes like this. Okay, so we're finding some notes here. You've got the octave of the low B on the 5th string, okay, up to 12th fret of the 4th string. That's a minor 3rd going to a 2nd. But when you add it with the drone of those top D notes, it gives a really cool sound, right? I hope we're still going. My computer's freaking out, so I have no idea if we're still alive or not, but I hope we're still going. Might have to cut it out here in a couple minutes. And then up at the 5th fret, once again, sort of that sus sound, right? All right, it gives a really distinctive sound, a really rich sound with that droney kind of thing going on. And you can just come across these shapes that just sound a lot different than what you would normally play on standard tuning. So the whole point of this, as we talked about last week when we started this whole thing, is just to sort of kickstart a little bit of creativity and just explore some things that are a little bit different. And they're really fun to mess around with. Okay, so don't be scared about it. Hopefully giving you a lot of the more common ones to check out with some, by no means an exhaustive list of chord shapes, but a few common moves, right? And a few examples here at the end of a few songs with some really kind of out there tunings so you can kind of see it. You know, I also think of that Creed song. We did Creed on Guitar Tricks, My Sacrifice, that has a sort of a droney kind of tuning like this as well. So anyway, I think maybe you lost me. I apologize. We'll try and straighten it out for next week. Take care, everybody. I appreciate you joining, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Cheers.